Working with Mark has been a horrible experience. I live in the Arcadia area and we had the nightmare of dealing with Mark. He seems to be too busy to take care of customers' needs, in my opinion. I've lived in this area for 45 years and I will tell my friends, do not use these guys. That was his Google review.
Welcome to the Property Management Success Podcast, where we interview leaders in the industry to uncover the secrets to profitability, efficiency, and achieving true freedom, whether it's your time, money, or lifestyle. I'm your host, Tony Klein, and I'm here to help you build a wildly successful property management business. Let's get to it. Welcome back to another episode of the Property Management Success Podcast. We've got Mark Brower in the house for the Property Management Aid Station. Mark, what is going on with you today?
We both have black hats today.
It's funny because I don't think either one of us have worn a hat in the podcast. We're both wearing the black hats crew today.
Yeah. And you and I are going to be in the Grand Canyon soon. And that right there is a running belt, like one of those elastic ones that you can put goose and like. So I was using that hiking up a mountain. I'm in Logan, Utah right now.
I love it. You know, that's actually the reason why so soon as we finish this podcast, I've got my running gear on already. I'm heading out the door. I don't know if you can see this, but inside this is like silver metallic. It's called Omni Heat. And I'm trying to do some heat training because I know you guys like it hot in Arizona, and I'll be leaving to go to the Cocodona 250 in about 9 days.
Oh my gosh, that's right.
So, yeah, okay. So I'm doing a little heat training.
Well, I'm a little hijacked. We got on this, and I'm like, hey, Tony, can you give me a couple more minutes? And I'm just like delaying, starting recording because what I'm doing right now, and where my brain is completely hijacked, is I'm crafting a reply to a 1-star review that we got on Google. And you know what I usually do? I usually write an initial response, and then I read it and reflect, and then I revise until it's like, okay, no, that's really what I want to say. And so that's what I'm doing. I'm revising it. This guy is really upset. Like, and you know what? In my experience, Tony, most people, if they're frustrated, you can handle it with high enough skill that you can exit the relationship and they don't feel so incensed that they feel like doing you harm on the way out. Like usually with clients, that's been my experience. Like if you're high skilled and you're really clear with your communication and you notice when things are going off the rails and you address it with confidence, firmness, and respect, usually you can exit a client relationship without getting fiery arrows shot into your chest multiple times. This is not one of those cases. This guy is pissed. And in my experience, people only get pissed if they feel personally insulted. It's not just that, oh, things went wrong with the service, or, oh, you know, I'm frustrated, or, oh, we didn't have good communication. It's like something, the way something was handled, like caused them to feel personally insulted. And then to work that out, now they're really going to try to do as much harm as they can.
I think that's true. I think that there's another piece of it for me where I've seen where there's communication, but they still don't feel like they've been heard. So I think you can get out of a relationship where both parties are heard and there's just a disconnect and we're just not a good fit. But where I've seen people go off the rails is where they feel like they're communicating, they want to get their way. It's just not in our system to give them their way, and so we let them know that, and yet they'll still come back and instead of accepting it, they're like, yeah, but you didn't hear me. This is what I want.
Totally. Yeah. And it's like, well, yeah, okay. Yeah, did we spend enough time proving to them that we understand where they're coming from and that we validated that their position is reasonable and rational? Now we've got a foundation for the beginning of respect. Because then even if we disagree, we can just own our part of it and say, well, you know, I see where you're coming from, and from your perspective, I agree that's completely reasonable and rational. And I'm glad we're talking about this because I'm just going to be really honest with you. I can't meet that. I'm not going to be able to
Yeah.
meet that expectation. Let's get you, let's minimize the damage to you now that we know this clearly and get you to someone else that can meet that. Well, what are you talking about? I want to work with you. Yep, I get it. And, forgive me. We are extremely rigid with our property standards and the requirements of support in our owner relationships. And right now, we're losing on both of those ends. And the only thing that we can do to protect, the quality of service we want to deliver is to be super particular about not compromising on the standards for the property and the standards for the level of support we need from clients. And we get it, we're not the fit for everybody, and it's totally fine. But when we find that out, when we get clear, like we just did, the thing that we can do best for you is to refer you to somebody else that we think would be a better fit, and try to make that transition smooth and fast, because we realize you're losing $80 a day as your property sits vacant right now.
So this is going to be an interesting podcast for me because I have listened to you openly say, look, if we get a bad review, if we get a 1-star review, I am going to own it. And so I want to try to reconcile these two things where you're upset that this person is out of line. And I don't know if we're going to dig into the details and the
Yes, we
specifics
are.
of it. Okay, so we're going to get into the details of how we got to this point where we've got this 1-star review. But I've also heard you say very emphatically that if something goes wrong in my company, I own it.
100%.
Okay, so let's dive in and let's talk a little bit before we reconcile those. Let's talk a little bit about how we got to this place with this gentleman in the first place.
Yes. So 1 month ago, he signed up with us. We went and did a rent ready inspection, and gave him his report. And we give owners the option. So maybe this is a learning opportunity right now, right here at this moment. Like we currently have a policy that gives the owners the option of bringing their own property into rent ready compliance according to our standards. So maybe, and not just a small maybe, a significant maybe. Maybe this is an opportunity for us to change that policy. I would love to change that policy. I would love to say, if you're going to have us, and I think we've talked about this before, and I think your policy was, nope, we're doing it, right?
Yeah,
we're going to get your property into rent-ready compliance. That's why you hired us. That's part of our plan. If you want to do your own work, then we're not the right fit for you. Is that right?
That's right. And we did get some pushback from people, but I'd rather know that now that they weren't a good fit than actually sign an agreement with them and then moving forward. So most of our people that we said that to, they were ready to turn it over to us. They thought that they could get it rent ready. They thought they could go on the nights and weekends and do some painting, or bring in their cousin Joe and have him do some painting or whatever. But to me, when you hire a professional property management company, you are signing over the legal authorization to authorize them to manage the property from that point forward.
Yeah.
You're giving them the keys, you're giving them the authority, and we still go out and we had a setup fee that we charged that allowed us to go and do a new property walkthrough that documented the condition of the property when we brought it into our portfolio. And then we also gave them a document that had our standards, and we were very clear that because it had our reputation on the line, we were going to bring all properties that came into our portfolio up to our standards.
Yeah.
And we wouldn't allow them to do that work.
I love
as a matter of fact, from the moment they signed that agreement, they were no longer authorized to go on the property without us. Right?
There you go. Ooh, I love that. So strong.
It's all about setting expectations up front. And because those were our expectations, so I'd rather set them up front. Let's have that discussion, then sign the agreement, and then move forward.
I love it. Well, I think that's maybe where we're trending. So currently we have maybe a failed policy of letting owners do their own rent-ready turn work. And so this gentleman got our list. He said he's going to handle, I think, all or at least most of it himself. Well, even though he acted like he agreed with our critical, we have critical, recommended, and we have critical and recommended. So there was some agreement reached about the critical items. He said he was going to do it himself. We went and checked on the property. They weren't all done after he told us they were done. Then he said that he went out and did the rest of them, and then they weren't done. So there's another problem there, because I know for sure in our company in the past we have talked about a policy where they get one chance at doing their part of the list, and anything when they tell us it's done, anything that's not done, they are agreeing that we will do it at the cost we had estimated, without discussion. So that's another place that we failed and we could have done better, right?
Yeah.
So ultimately there was some back and forth, and then we got to a point where he's like, "Well, I'm leaving these things in the property in a locked cabinet," which is completely contrary to our policy.
You mean you don't rent out properties, but only rent out half of them and let them keep the.
No, terrible
Yeah.
idea. So I think that was the straw that broke the camel's back. Plus, he was so aggressive and rude on the phone with our PM that was onboarding this account that she's like, you know what, I just don't think this is the right fit. And so yesterday, and here's another failure. What should have happened is it should have escalated beyond the property manager. The property manager got the business development manager back involved to have the conversation about, hey, no, we talked about we have high standards for the properties and the owners that we work with. You're not meeting the standards, so let's just divest and part ways. That conversation did not happen live. It happened over text. Terrible idea. And so the guy's raging pissed. And also, I failed, like when it got kicked back to the BDM, he sort of let me know about it, but I didn't get a clear signal like, hey, Mark, I need you to call this guy to de-escalate things so that our reputation isn't tarnished. And so I misread that he kind of wanted me to do that. And maybe he thought it was optional, or he didn't realize the risk was this high that he would start just raging against us online. And so those are at least 3 or 4 issues along the way. So here's the review. Working with Mark has been a horrible experience. First of all, I've never talked to this guy. But
that's horrible in my mind. I love talking to Mark. So
thank you.
Yeah.
Working with Mark has been a horrible experience. I live in the Arcadia area, and we had the nightmare of dealing with Mark. He seems to be too busy to take care of customers' needs, in my opinion. I've lived in this area for 45 years, and I will tell my friends, do not use these guys. That was his Google review. Let's read the Yelp review. Oh, and by the way, he didn't stop there. He went on to all of our social media and started dropping nasty comments there too. So this is like a really good example of what you do not want to do. There are so many ways we could have avoided this. Better policy, better communication, level setting expectations. Okay, Yelp review. Not a very good company to work with. I own 3 homes, and my place in Moon Valley was going to be managed by these guys. About 2 months into the process, that's a lie, it was 30 days, after a detailed list that was actually ridiculous was sent for $5,000 in improvements. Okay, that's a fragmented sentence. It didn't complete the thought. They just seemed to be out of touch, caps, capital O, capital T, and not realistic, capital R, at all, capital A. I would not recommend them to anyone, capital A on anyone, after my experience and wasted months of time. Absolutely ridiculous, in my opinion. Okay, so something I do know from the limited research I've done, this has all just come to my attention in the last, just a little bit here, but on a recorded call with someone on my staff over the last day or two, at one point he said, listen, this is just a piece of shit property. Just rent it out. So, clearly not the right relationship we're looking for. We're not looking to work with slumlords. We don't ever want to work with somebody that has the mindset that this is just a rental or a piece of shit rental. We don't want to do that at all. And so we failed to set, I think my sales guys are really good at this point of setting, high expectations, but sometimes that just makes people want to work with you even more. But then once we got into the thick of it, again, I think going back, I think if we had your policy of like the only way we're moving forward is if you agree to all these things, you send us the money, and we're doing the work. And if that's not a fit for you, then at least you're going to be, annoyed, but you're probably not going to like go on a rampage like this and try to destroy our reputation, right?
Yeah, so I have a question for you, and I know I think we've said this on the podcast early on, but what's your company mission?
Helping good people do more good.
Okay, so to me, that would have, at least if this guy was having these types of conversations early on, that would have screened this guy out. Because if he's talking about the piece of shit property and just rent it out, to me, that's not helping good people do more good. If you're saying put somebody to live in this property, and I already know that it's not a good quality property, to me that would screen that out. But
100%.
to go back to what you said before, so I do think that there's a couple of failure points that you had with this. Number one, it is allowing the owners to do their own work. If they've decided to turn that property over to you, one of two things needs to happen. There either needs to be a deadline of when they're going to get that work completed, or you're going to bring in your own team. But I don't even like that, and that's why we didn't have that policy. Our policy was, great, you've turned it over to a professional property management company. We have professional vendors that we work with. We have skilled tradesmen. We are going to put this in property into a condition that we can be proud to have our name associated with it. And then once we bring it to that condition, we are going to hold tenants accountable to maintaining it in that same condition. And if they don't, then if they do damage to it, we'll be able to withhold it from the security deposit. So by raising the condition of the property when they first come into our portfolio, we are raising the level of tenants that we're going to attract to it. Because if a tenant is willing to move into a property that needs to be painted, scuffs in the walls, holes in the doors, stains in the carpet, if they're willing to live like that, then they're going to be okay with treating your property like that. And it's not going to get better over time. It's going to continue to get worse. So I think that's one of the first areas. The second area that I see is you allowing them to do some of that work and then saying, I mean, to me, this sounds a little bit like the IRS. We're going to allow you to do your own taxes, but if you screw it up, we're going to hammer you with penalties and interest. So not having any communication about what happened after the fact and just saying, well, now we're going to go in and do the work that you said you were going to do. To me, that sets really bad, it just says poor expectations, because I thought I did what I was supposed to do, and then I turn the property over to you, and then all of a sudden I get this bill. And even if he's in the wrong, it's hard to have him have that perspective after he's already had that emotional gut punch of being charged for doing work that he did in his mind.
Yep.
So for me, that is an area where I would look at, how do we clean up our onboarding and make it a better experience?
Yep. Should I read my, you want me to read my reply? You can critique my reply.
Yeah, let's hear it. Let's get.
I usually pride myself on taking ownership, but also, being fair. So I might still be in the heat of the moment. Honestly, this is so fresh and raw that this might not be the right reply. Hi, Ryan. I sent a direct private reply to your Yelp review yesterday requesting a chance to talk to you directly so I can better understand your concerns. My cell phone number is 602-228-9617. I am traveling with family, but if you text me, I will make it a priority to take your call and address your concerns if you're willing to do so. It is rare for us to have friction like this with a new client during the onboarding process, so I'm especially interested in finding out how we got here from your perspective. I am sorry we failed to more quickly determine that this was not the right business relationship. This resulted in lost time on your part, and I can appreciate this is very frustrating. It seems clear we didn't communicate our rent-ready standards and reach a solid agreement with you about them. In one of the calls, you said, this is just a little piece of shit property, just rent it. This was not the right business relationship for either of us, and this experience is causing me to question our policy of allowing owners to do work to bring property up to our standards. We are deconstructing the timeline now and will be making this a major focus of our learning and training in next week's all company meeting. I'm sorry we failed you. It was kind of a dig when I put his quote in there, wasn't it? I'm throwing him under the bus.
A little bit, a little bit. So I went to, and this has probably been 10 or 15 years ago, but I went to a presentation where Todd Breen was talking about how to respond to Yelp and Google reviews. And his position was, and I've adopted this ever since, is we're not responding to that review. We're responding to any other possible owner that might be reading our reviews.
Totally.
Yeah. So if I'm listening or if I'm reading that from a potential client's perspective, does the dig help my cause and help explain it as to why we were misaligned? Or does it make me feel like if it goes sideways, I'm going to be publicly put on blast?
Yeah, that's the part I'm struggling with.
So my thoughts is, and it's funny because this came up right before we hopped on here. So this is still fresh for Mark, and he's feverishly retyping his response.
I'm super distracted.
Right
sorry, this is so unexpected.
Yeah, but I do think it's important to say how you were misaligned and where you were misaligned. You, in my opinion, did have some things that you could re-examine with your policies, but if those policies were clear up front, even though I think we could make them more streamlined, make the expectations more clear, for us to take a month to get to where we are, this didn't just happen where he did everything in the first day or two to bring it up to your standards, and then the next 28 days was your delay.
Nope. No, we were right on it.
Yeah. So I think there's something you can address about once we received the property in the condition that you, I don't want to say claimed it was in because that word is kind of a trigger word. But once you turn the property over to us, we compared it to our standard list and discovered that there were still things that were unrepaired, uncorrected. So I do think it's worth saying that there's things that he did to cause us to be in this situation. I'm still on the fence with the quote too. I think it does show his attitude, but also even from a quote standpoint, it's never been my policy to put any sort of curse words in print coming from being attributed to me, even though it's a direct quote.
Okay.
From a business standpoint. So take it how you will. But so what's your desired outcome with this?
To learn, to get better, to hopefully just overhaul the whole policy so this could never happen again.
What do you think your business development people are going to think about you if you were to rehaul this or overhaul this policy and say, nope, when they turn it over to us, we are going to be handling any make-readies from this point forward? And how do you think business development's going to handle that?
I think they would. Well, they're commissioned, so I don't know how long. I don't know how often this comes up. You know what I mean? So that's something we'll have to deconstruct. Like if they think like this is like, wow, like 95% of our owners want us to do the work anyway. Or if it's like, no, in our market right now, like the majority of the owners want to have a crack at some of the list themselves. And if so, then we need to like be like one and done. Like you, okay. So our guy, like we're never going back. Like You said the work was done on this date. We sent our vendor with the full list of your items and our items, instructing them to do anything that isn't done. And you've already agreed to be billed for that. There's no discussion at this point. Now, some people are still going to be upset, but with clear evidence and photos and everything and a clear agreement, that's an experiment we could run, and it might be slightly better than what we had in this case, right?
Yeah, I still think in that case, if I've thought that I've done the work and I turned it over to you, and you and I can have different expectations or understandings of what it means to have the property clean, what it means to have the property properly painted. We could have different ideas of what that means, but ultimately the property needs to be to your standards, not to his, in order to have it enter your portfolio. When you do property turns in between tenants, are you letting them do the work at that point?
It is still our process, but most of them don't, because a lot of them are out of state at that point.
So here's something that I talk about when I'm having my coaching calls, which is every time you introduce another variable. We've actually talked about this on here because we were trying to figure out how many nuts or how many.
Yeah, yep.
Yeah. So anyway, anytime you introduce a new variable, you don't just double the amount of complications. You exponentially create challenges. And so I think that if most of your people aren't doing it, the ones that are opting to, in my opinion, because you're allowing it. If you didn't allow it, if you were to position it that every day that the property is vacant costs them X dollars a day, and by doing the work themselves, they're having to track down the trades, they're having to go back and inspect the work, they're having to tell you that it's done, that adds more hassle, more money, and more vacancy on their part. And by you handling the maintenance on the onboarding and at tenant turn, you are able to put professional vendors that you have a relationship with, that respond quickly, that provide good work, that stand behind their work, and you're able to get that done and minimize their vacancy with zero frustration or friction from them on their part, because they're not having to go and schedule this stuff after work or take time off of work or go on the internet and find the trades. So I think you can accomplish eliminating those options, creating a much better streamlined system for your team, and ultimately provide a better service for your clients.
Totally. Love it. Love all of it. Let's do it.
All right.
I'm still distracted.
Yeah.
Good conversation. Hopefully somebody got something out of this. If you think I should have worded that differently, post a comment here. I am a sponge. I want to learn. I want to be the best version of myself. So, share with us what your experience has been in really owning the outcome and, fully owning it when someone, blasts you online, instead of just getting reactive and upset and slandering them back. Maybe I'm slandering them back with throwing them under the bus with that comment. So
I don't know. A direct quote is that
within the next 2 days, I'll have a final version of that review. So if you want to go check out Mark Brower Properties on Google Business Profile, you'll see the final version.
Yeah. Okay. And I am curious to see if owners or if property management company owners allow the property owners to do the make ready on onboarding. So I'm actually going to have Vanessa update our poll that goes out in the newsletter this week. And that will be the poll question. So if you are not signed up for the property management success newsletter, I want you to go ahead and enroll. That was my dog moved. But yeah, let's go ahead and get you enrolled, and that way you can vote on the poll.
Okay, let's do it.
So with that, Mark, I think it's time to get these guys out of here.
Get out of here. Go. Yeah. you're done at the aid station, and go hit that next segment hard, and we'll see you soon.
Thanks for tuning in to the Property Management Success Podcast. We'll be back with another value-packed episode to help you level up your property management game. If you've got something valuable out of today's episode, please share it with a friend or colleague, and don't forget to subscribe and leave a review so you never miss out on future insights and strategies and tactics. Until next time, here's to your success.